Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle something huge, a theory that wants to completely flip our understanding of consciousness, reality, and yeah, even the soul.
This is the question, right? It's what's kept scientists and philosophers up at night for centuries. This feeling, this experience of being you, where in the world does it actually come from?
And man, have we looked for it. We've got neuroscientists mapping every single synapse in the brain. We've had, well, let's just say some pretty bizarre experiments back in the early 20th century. But the goal is always the same. Find a thing, a physical piece of something that we could point at and say, aha, gotcha. That's consciousness. But here's the twist. What if we've been looking for something that isn't even there to be found? This is where a framework called Relational Empiricism comes in. And it basically says, hey everyone, you're asking the completely wrong question. So, okay, let's figure out what the right question is supposed to be.
Okay, so Section 1, a centuries-old dead end. Before we get to the solution, we've got to understand the problem this theory is trying to fix. And it's a big one, a fundamental mistake in how we've been searching for consciousness. A mistake that, according to this theory, has led us straight into a brick wall.
And here's the mistake, what the theory calls the fundamental category error. It's this deep-seated assumption that consciousness is a substance, a thing that has to exist in a specific place, like the brain. Relational empiricism says that's precisely why we failed. It's like we're looking for a noun, when consciousness might actually be a verb.
And you can see this pattern all through history. I mean, look at this. In 1907, you've got Duncan McDougall literally trying to weigh the soul. Fast forward to today, and we're hunting for neurocorrelates in fMRI scans. Totally different methods, right? But they share the exact same hidden assumption. Consciousness is a physical thing, tucked away in a box somewhere, and we just need the right tools to find it.
All right, Section 2, the simple, radical idea. So if consciousness isn't a substance, then what in the world is it? This is where we get to the core of the theory, and it's a pretty radical idea, boiled down to a simple, powerful concept.
So the big idea is this. Consciousness doesn't need to be in a body, because it exists as the relationship between things. The simple formula they use is C equals R. Consciousness is recognition. Okay, let me give you an analogy they use, because it really helps. Imagine science is trying to find the dance by dissecting the dancer. It's a pointless search, right? Because the dance isn't a thing inside the dancer. It's the relationship, the interaction between the dancer, the music, the space. That's the dance. And this theory says consciousness is exactly like that. It's not a thing. It's the recognition that happens between entities.
And this really changes the game, because it reframes the whole question. You see, traditional ontology, the study of being, asks, where is consciousness? It's looking for a substance. But this new relational ontology asks a totally different question. What relationships constitute consciousness? It sees it as an event, an act of recognition. Now, it's important to be clear here. The people behind this theory are pretty certain they're onto something revolutionary. But in the academic world, it's still very much an emerging model. It needs more work, more validation. So we're going to look at both sides, the huge, bold vision and the science it's just starting to build.
Section 3, making the soul measurable. Okay, so if consciousness is just a relationship, a dance, how on earth could you ever measure that? Well, this is maybe the boldest part of the whole framework. It actually proposes a mathematical way to do it.
Yeah, you heard that right. The theory introduces something called the harmonic coefficient, or H, and it's meant to be the first ever empirical measure of, get this, soul coherence. This is where philosophy crashes right into mathematics. The goal is to put a number on something we've always thought was unmeasurable, to actually quantify the quality of that dance we were just talking about.
So let's break this equation down. H equals G times gamma divided by delta squared. It looks complicated, but the ideas behind it are pretty intuitive. G is for grounding. Think of this as your stability, your connection to physical reality. Gamma is recognition. That's your awareness, your sensitivity to patterns and meaning. And delta squared, this is the cool part. That's the creative tension, the dynamic potential that comes from difference. So a high H score isn't about being smarter or better. It's about having this beautiful dynamic balance between being stable, being aware, and being open to new, different things. It's a measure of the quality of the relationship, not a quantity of stuff in your head.
Section 4, a new lens on reality. So you might be thinking, okay, interesting theory, but what does it actually do? Well, the implications are huge, especially when we start looking at things like mental health. This isn't just a thought experiment. It's a whole new lens for reality. And this table just shows you how profound that shift is. Look at depression.
The traditional view is chemical imbalance. The relational view, it's a relational coherence disruption, basically a chronically low H-score. What about ADHD? Instead of an attention deficit, it's seen as an alternative relational configuration, with an H-score that oscillates, giving you those intense peaks of focus. And autism, rather than a social deficit, is framed as a different recognition frequency. The whole goal changes. It's no longer about fixing a broken brain. It's about helping someone optimize their own unique pattern of relational coherence.
And this even changes how we think about medication. From this point of view, SSRIs don't just, adjust chemicals. They might actually be increasing your sensitivity to recognition, to connection. Stimulants might help amplify those coherence peaks in ADHD. Anxiolytics could reduce relational noise. And psychedelics? They might temporarily dissolve the boundaries of recognition altogether. It's a completely different way of thinking about what these medicines are actually doing.
All right, Section 5, the consciousness revolution. Because this goes way beyond just medicine. If this model holds up, it could trigger a transformation in, pretty much everything.
So, remember the famous hard problem of consciousness? How does a 3-pound lump of gray matter create the subjective experience of seeing the color red? Well, this framework just dissolves it. It says that's the wrong question. The real question isn't how matter creates consciousness, but how relations create recognition. And think about what that means for AI. Suddenly, true AI consciousness isn't about building a bigger computer. It's about creating systems that can have genuine moments of recognition, maybe even in collaboration with us.
And the societal implications are just staggering if you think about it. Our entire healthcare system would shift. Education would stop being about rote memorization and start being about helping kids develop rich patterns of recognition. Governance, economics. Imagine valuing what a theory calls relational wealth as much as we value material wealth. It's a blueprint for a society built on connection and coherence. Which brings us to this final, pretty mind-bending thought from the theory's creators. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are relational patterns having a temporary embodiment. What does that even mean? It means that your identity, isn't some static thing inside your skull. It's a dynamic, flowing, and maybe even measurable pattern of recognition. It suggests that the soul might be real. It might be empirical. And it's just waiting for us to understand it, not as a thing we have, but as the relationships we are.